appreciate that.
Thank you. No, this was a lot of fun. This was very different than I expected.
Yeah.
Every time I do this conversation, I have like a mental man of like...
What did you expect?
What? Hi, I'm Ahmed El-Samadisi. I'm the founder and CEO of Narrator. And Narrator is a platform that helps people make better decisions with data. Yeah, we raised our Series A about 2 years ago, aiming to do our Series B in the next couple of months. We are a very unique company where we kept it very small. So we're 12 people, really focused on delivering the best kind of product with focused work. And we have customers from all over, from big companies like PBS and Beyond Yoga, Code Academy, AppFolio, to a lot of smaller companies that you might have not known, which are more like seed and Series A companies like MyBundle and Adams when they started. I think that a lot of the stuff that you want to maintain for culture and experience for the people is critical to keep your team small. So we wanted to really focus on experts building very detailed products. And to do that, it just takes a lot of time you can't have a lot of people in the kitchen cooking. That's how you build a groupthink kind of product. And when you're a little bit different and very nuanced, that tiny details of quality can be seen by knowing that the engineer who built this thing 6 or 7 times. And every time they rebuild it, they get to tune it a little bit more to make that experience for the customer even more incredible. Yeah, so we do a very long process of hiring. I think until today, every person who joined Narrator was like a journey for them to enter. Like they would come in, do consulting once a week, then twice a week, then 3 times, then 4 times, then they would be full-time. And in that like slow progression, they get a chance to experience what it's like to be Narrator, because we're going to pay them a lot less than what they normally make. And we get a chance to understand how it's like to work with them. So finding a lot of people like with that detailed experience is critical. I think until recently, our average years of experience at Narrator was over 15 years. So you're talking about everyone has kind of done it and seen it and experienced the scars and the nuance and really has this intimate feeling of the problem we're solving, but also of what is it like to build a company. You let go of them. Like, I think the hardest thing about, like they say, hire slowly and fire fast. So unfortunately, we've let go of a lot of people also in the process. I think that is part of the journey. And I think you can let go of people in like a way where they still feel like connected to Narrator. And I think everyone who was part of Narrator and is now not part of Narrator will still tell you that they have fond memories. They bring us along with a lot of where they go, and it's kind of an incredible experience overall. So a couple things. Well, when we raised our Series A, it was still like product-based. It's like we are building a product that is doing something different. When you go to build a Series B, you have to change a little bit. It's now not just product, but you also have traction, and you're trying to scale it. You have to show a little bit more in the revenue, a little bit more in the company growth, that you've already built a team and the infrastructure to that money actually helps you. Kind of, and you just have the bar is a lot higher. So it's not just like how many customers you have. It's also like, who are they? What are they doing? What are they replacing with your tool? Are they benefiting from Narrator? And that's all the kind of pieces. That all being said, like I recently did a conference and VCs like attacked me for it. And then it ended up like almost raising in like a week without a board, without a deck or anything, because I think there's still an aspect of FOMO. And if people like see something that's truly unique, there's a level of excitement there. And we just decided that it was like too rushed, and we wanted to think about these things very methodically. So we're like, okay, back off, guys. End of the year, we'll dive into this for real and create that curated set of people that actually want to be part of this journey. Because like I make this joke and I tell it to all of my investors. It's like, you're probably not going to make money off Narrator. I'm like, you won't. Your kids might be really fucking rich. Like, but you probably won't, because we have no way of getting acquired because our business is too unique and very combative to almost all the big companies. Most big companies have a product that we would put out of business as we succeed. And to actually win, we have to win the entire data market, which is like $1 trillion of tools. So that's a long journey. And therefore, like you have to kind of find the person who's in it for the 20 years as you kind of go through this process. So I just tell them up front, I'm like, you're not gonna make money. Just set that expectation so you just know that what we're looking to do and we're trying to kind of, the world that we're trying to create is not something that you're gonna see in a couple of years. It's gonna be a long journey, and it is a better world, and it's a more, I think, people will be happier because of it, data will be changed, and you just gotta be part of the ride. Yeah. When you raise a Series A, there's a lot of pitfalls that you can easily fall into. One of them is angels. So we ended up finding a lot of angel investors who were like super excited, and we were thinking, okay, that's like having 20 really good investors. And unfortunately, like 90% of them were completely useless. There's a lot of people who like are excited in making the bet, but are not really committed. And I think you want to separate those people, because the ones who are committed will really dedicate their time and resources to help you succeed. The ones who just want to write a check and hope, like it's a cash bet for them, like kind of suck. And I think it's really hard to know which is which. So that's one thing that we did that was really, really dangerous. The other thing is, thing that we did that I thought was really well, is we chose the people and culture of the investor over the brand. I think it's really easy to get like a really big name and you're like, oh my God, they're a huge name. But just remember, they're like $1 billion fund. They're writing you a $20 million check. You mean nothing to them. Like they'll gladly ignore you when you're struggling. And I think that people often optimize for like the perfect case scenario, where like, if everything goes well, I'm gonna be getting $1 billion and I can use their name to go bigger. But if you're doing well, like you'll find other investors and it'll be easy. Optimize for the shit show situation where things start breaking and you need someone who's like still with it, even if you're struggling. And I think like in Narrator, which has had so much struggle over the last 5 years, and I'm sure we'll continue to struggle for another like 10 years, there's always new struggles. You want investors who don't write you off for the next shiny object, but are like ride or die. And I think that's what you need. And I think that's like one of the things that decision we made that I'm so happy we did. A good fundraising strategy is one of the most confusing topics I think out there. I think there's so many example pitch decks that will not work. Like people love copying Airbnb's pitch deck, or like these things, like they worked for many different reasons, and you might not be that company. And don't look at VC's pitch decks, because a lot of VCs will write a pitch deck like, this is what I want to see, and like ignore that. They haven't sold companies. They don't know how to sell. I think the key things that you want to do in a pitch deck is work on your story. I think as founders, we really kind of struggle to tell our story. Like, why is this important? Why does somebody care? I actually love like WeWork. If you look at how WeWork kind of pitched, like it gets a bad rep now, but like Adam was incredible at telling that story and painting a picture that everyone can get behind. Two, I think focus on the now. Like focus on the big future and the now. Don't give us like the next 13,000 steps. People love showing like this journey of like 1 year we're gonna do this, and in 2 years, and in 3 years, and in 4 years. Like actuality, you don't know what's gonna happen after 1 year. Your business is gonna change so much. So like a lot of the stuff that people want you to give them, what are you gonna hire? Like how are you gonna spend your money? Marketing, engineering, product. That shit doesn't mean anything. And I think it's easy to get distracted by that stuff and forget the part that your company is trying to solve a really core problem. And you want the person who's on the other side to feel the problem. Because like a good pitch should seem something like, paint a picture that someone can be like, oh, that was me. Then be like, did that suck? And the person goes, yes, that sucked. And you go, okay, well, let's show you a different world. Imagine you, the same person, but with this new world. And they're like, oh, that seems much better. Okay, great. We're just changing that. Now, how do we do that? Here's the 3 things that we've done. Let's focus on this one piece. Let me give you that experience. Now let's move forward and tell you about why this business will be the hugest thing. So I think like getting that personal feeling, because you're talking to a person, is critical. Like versus like market size. Like sure, you have $1 billion market size. If I capture 1% of the business, I will be $1 trillion company. Like cool. Like everyone has seen that. So I would say focus on the story you're telling. And one advice I give people always is find another founder who's done it and have them pitch your company for you. You'll see that when they pitch, like if I was pitching your company, I would tell the story very differently. And you'll see that I cut out so much stuff that I don't care about for you, that you think are very important, but are not actually important to your story. It sounds nicer, it's exciting. So I do that with Narrator. I do that for a lot of other people. I'll pitch Narrator to them, they'll pitch their company to me, and I'll just have them iterate on that kind of process. And you just kind of get really good at honing that story that you want to tell. And I think that's like kind of honestly what makes and breaks you. Yeah, I think one of the hypocrisies of being a CEO or a founder, like when you're a founder, there's multiple founders and there's different roles and everyone has this place. But one of the hypocrisies of being CEO is that you are forced to do everything that you need to do, and you can't really hire yourself out of a role. So I think it's the parts of a CEO's job is to be a really good manager and make sure there's money in the bank. I'm a very technical person, and the reason why I built Narrator was to solve a very specific problem. So I actually don't care that much about like a lot of the stuff that people like to focus on. Like I don't care about dilution. I gave most of my shares to my team like 2 years into the company. I don't care about money. Like I think Narrator, as long as we have enough money to continue going, I'm very happy. I don't need to be a trillion dollar company tomorrow. I'm not in any rush. Like we're still in a place where everyone still thinks what we do is unbelievable. Like, so I'm not really feeling like the need to do faster, more, hurrah, hurrah. So I like to focus on the nuance and the experience. And I think that makes also a really bad CEO sometimes. So like I get distracted so often by like one customer being unhappy, and then somebody's like, like we can just ignore that customer. And I'm like, ignore that customer? Every customer is like emotionally attached. I have an emotional thing. Like I still do. I've moved myself out of so many roles, but the role that I still hold is I still answer most of the help scout tickets. And I still do a lot of like the customer, just complaints. Like they complain to me the most. And I think that's like important to me. So part of that is also changing the company to work for who you are. I think that everyone in Narrator believes in the vision that I'm trying to create, and they want me to lead that vision, which is like great. So I guess I'm being CEO. But there's also a lot of skills that I don't really have that I think a CEO or even a person who runs product should. I'm the worst person I'll be honest here. I'm literally the worst person to explain my ideas, which is funny. Because if you see my first secret story that I'll share with you guys, early investors, like even people on the team were like, we have no idea what this person's building. We're like, we have no idea. And I was like, it's gonna be this thing and it's gonna do this. And even building my product, like we have a team of 4 co-founders, 2.5 years in, the first person to join Narrator, Matt, comes to me and he's like, Ahmed, I think I finally get Narrator. So like, there's a lot of layers there in like the complexity of explaining something that has never been done, very nuanced. Why it works is very more complicated. Sounds like a lot of other things that have been promised, and it's just a very complex topic. So what we ended up doing was changing the way the company works to enable to like kind of make up for my flaws. Like one of the things we did was we built a prototyping language, because I tend to like be much better like staying up at night, like kind of building and iterating on like something I'm trying to create and then giving it to customers. And I'm like, this is what we want, like to the team, which is much like way less efficient than someone who's like, I'm gonna clearly express the problem, but that's not me. And I think as CEO or anyone in the company, you kind of want to build a company around the people that like harnesses what they're really good at and like makes up for what they're bad at. I'm not treating everyone like kind of like a bolt and a screw. Like there's no metric system in a team building. Like you can't just make everyone fit perfectly. It's just gonna be weird. And we're just like, okay, keep it small, custom every part, and we'll figure out how to make this thing kind of fit so naturally together and adjust for each other. And I think that has led to a lot of benefits. Like people have believed in Narrator early on because they're like, we kind of get what you do. But like your team just like is so like solid that if they're still willing to follow you, like there must be something even more amazing than I can imagine. Or if like your customers are willing to nominate you for like awards, like that's something big. But I think we're gonna have over $6 million of our next round invested by our current customers. And we're not like a crowdsourcing. It's like B2B. It's like founders of companies being like, I want to be part of your business. That's so different. And it's that stuff that shows, but that takes a lot of time and really harnessing and treating people as individuals. And I think like, I don't know, as CEO, you kind of get to make up whatever the fuck you want. So I've chosen to just do it this way. People do it differently. I found that I'm not able to manage 100 people, but I can get really close with like 20. So we're trying to keep it as small as possible as we go. And we'll see what happens. A couple things that we do at Narrator that's like my bread and butter preaching is like, Narrator is your job. You're not a narrator. We don't brand ourselves as like, we're narrators. No. Narrator is a job. The company is not your baby. The company is something that you want to create and see in the world, and it's a vehicle to help people do things. Like the company can do a lot more than any individual employee. So don't make the company your life. It's not. And I think that's like a very important thing for me. So like, don't eat ramen and struggle and suffer so that you can have your company survive. Like, don't go buy a jet either. So I think we like make like I maintain, well, until recently it was the median of the company. I think now I'm a little lower, but whatever. So my life outside of work is focused on still the same kind of obsessions. I'm an obsessive person. I like how people think. I like just to pick up new hobbies and really dive into them, whether that's like dancing, which I really love, coming up with weird ideas that are like very nuanced. Like I love like very nuanced problems that I just pick and choose. I've recently been obsessed with trash cans, which is a weird thing to be obsessed with. But so that's the case. I live in Austin, which is a lovely place. I moved from New York to Austin for like a calmer, chill vibes. I do love raves. I have like a costume closet, so like you can imagine the kind of person I am. I have an incredible girlfriend that I really love. She happens to also be a CEO, so we get to like come back at the end of the night and just like be like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Yeah, so I guess the pieces, and yeah, I travel a lot, snowboard, and I guess it's kind of my life outside is just a person trying to figure, like everybody else. I think there's no like magic. I think everyone's trying to figure out what they want to do. Everyone's picking up new things. Everyone's reading some books. Everyone's getting hobbies. And I think like that's the point, right? It's just like I'm just doing the same things. That's a good question. So a lot of the sacrifices that come with founder life are, I don't know, for me, it's not what I think a lot of people have. I'm very much anti bootstrap and suffer. I think a lot of sacrifices that I had as a founder was more like emotional, like letting go of an employee that's like figuring out, like a lot of these things keep you up at night, not like if the company's gonna survive, but like this person who like really trusted you and now like you have to separate from them. That's really hard. There are struggles in just like frustrations in the world. Like I try to avoid like reading the news of tech because like this other company that's building a shoe, but it's red, is now just raised $1 trillion. And in data, like all these companies look the same to me. It's like we haven't changed our process and there's another way of doing the same thing, but with a different color. This visualization tool, instead of being yellow, it's now purple. And now there's another $1 billion company right there. So I tend to kind of just focus on like doing my lane. And that kind of stuff is just like really easy to kind of cause you a lot of distress. So I think that's been huge. You definitely make way less money. I think if I was a person who cared a lot more about money, I would be like, wow, I've been doing this for 5 years and making very little money. So I think you take those sacrifices in like money, you do have a sense of like, you're kind of always on the clock. I think being a CEO specifically, you are, I don't know if this is the right word, but like a slave to everything around you. Like if one of the employees is out and their role is not being done and there's no one else to take it in, that's your job. Doesn't matter what it is. Like that's your job now. Like you have to do that. And your job doesn't get smaller. You have to do your job at night. So if a customer is sad, like it's your job to make them happy. If your investors are yelling at you, it's your job to deal with them. So I think that like the biggest sacrifice is that you kind of like lose control over your own work life. Like I think as a CEO, you have the least amount of control over your own work life. You can craft the company you want, but your role is literally a function of your team, your investors, and your customers. So I think that's a huge sacrifice. And it's like actually like probably the most stressful thing you experience as a founder. I think anything outside of that is your doing. Like If you're eating ramen for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because you're bootstrapping your company, that's like your choice. Like, don't do that. Those are not sacrifices I made. I'm not like putting up all-nighters. Like, barely can like work if I sleep, like if I don't sleep. So it's not those things. For me, it's always been that you just have no control over your day-to-day. You're kind of moved into wherever you need to be at that moment. And your context from being there is like 5 minutes. It's like, you have a call, this customer is frustrated, go call, talk to them. And you're like, hello. They're like, blah, blah, blah. You're like, cool. Let's figure out how to make that better. Let's figure out what these things are. And then an employee is like, I'm taking a week off. And you're like, they're like, something happened, I need to take a week off. And you're like, great, take a week off, take your time. And then inside you're like, fuck, oh my God, okay, he's gone. Our team is small, that's like a big part. Who's gonna do that? What am I gonna do? Everyone has their role. Okay, let's redo that and start figuring out how to communicate that and change this entire situation and adjust. And stuff like that is really, really just kind of like, you just literally have no control over your day-to-day. But I personally believe that a job should never severely like affect everything you do. Yeah, the mental toll on a founder is huge. I think I look at a lot of founders will tell you the same thing. You start getting into meditation and like breathing and all the different pieces to kind of keep yourself leveled. I have one phrase that I tell myself in my head all the time in my everyday. And I think like, if you obsess over everything that happens, you will go crazy as a founder. The phrase I tell myself is no one thing ever really matters. And like, no one thing is ever gonna break a company. No one thing is ever gonna make a company. No one meeting is gonna break a company. No one meeting is gonna make it. No investor is gonna break it. No one's gonna make it. No customer is gonna break it. No customer is gonna make it. I think we hold a lot of, as a founders, the situation is so important. But like literally never in history has one thing ever mattered. What happens is that a series of things in a pattern lead to a situation that matters. So I think that's like the kind of mental load is like you're constantly anxious because like you think everything is so important, and every series, what is the word I'm looking for? Every seasoned founder or any seasoned CEO can keep their cool because they know that no one thing matters. Everything's fixable, everything continues. Like if I thought about the amount of things I thought were gonna kill Narrator or gonna make Narrator $1 trillion, nothing mattered. And I think it's really easy to like glorify the stories of like Steve Jobs, like, well, the iPad really was the big difference. And then you're like, yeah, but was it? Or was it like the 7,000 things that happened in between then and then? Like, it's like Uber was so innovative. It's like, yeah, but the idea of ride sharing happened like 10 years before Uber. Like all these things, when you study them, you forget this like really nice glorification of like the one moment. Nobody had a moment. And I think the more you study companies, the more you realize that there's no one moment that makes it, no one moment that has ever broken it. And like, it's fine. WeWork is my greatest example. WeWork is like, oh my God, WeWork collapsed. Like we had a failed IPO and everything, blah, blah, blah. WeWork is still like $15 billion worth. It dropped like from 45 to 15, but that's fine. Like it didn't die the company. Like there's still buildings out there. And I think that's like the worst situation you could imagine, like as an implosion that has led to many movies and stories. So if that didn't kill the company, like what are you worried about? Like unless you're lying the whole time and you're making up stories and everything is full of shit, that would affect your business. But one thing doesn't matter. So as a founder, like I'm telling that myself every single day, this is just a moment. Like this too will pass. Well, when you build something different that's as big as Narrator, I would like everyone to think differently. Actually, I plan on making every single person in the world think differently. That's going to be the legacy that I leave. I think everyone in the world is going to think a little bit differently. And the future of the world is not going to behave the same way it is today. I think that people are going to be able to make decisions, and data is going to actually help it. Like not theater, not dashboarding, but like imagine a world where you are working with a computer to make your decisions, and you don't have you don't think about data teams or asking someone else that question. Where the way you make decisions right now is very faulty. As humans, we're so bad at decision making, like really bad. We're really good at combining different things, but when it comes to like understanding like our own uncertainty and our own error, we're so bad at that. And I think something human-like, a narrator, which we believe it's stories, can help you really think about information differently. And the better people think, the better decisions they will make. And if you can enable them with the information that they need at that moment to make that right decision, then I think you lead to a better world. And I think this can't happen with like a small data team or 5 people making decisions, or like training a group of people to like teach people how to make decision making. Decision making constantly needs to be reinforced. It constantly needs to be affecting you. And I think I will be happy when every single person in the world is making decisions correctly. And I think seeing how far we're able to do with like cars making decisions and like different things making decisions, we can understand decision making pretty well, but yet it's still so faulty. And I think that's the thing that I want to see in the world, is just everyone using data actually correctly to make better decisions that lead to better results. And I think that starts with like literally changing how everyone thinks. So, small goal.